J.A., the LA Clippers have perpetually been trying to get it right. From Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to now it's just Kawhi Leonard. And now they've bought Chris Paul home for what looks to be his farewell season. You re-signed James Harden. You got Bradley Beal off of the scrap heap when he got bought out by the Phoenix Suns. Traded for John Collins. 1-10. This looks like, if health and age and all these other ifs, J.A., are we discounting the Clippers because they're the Clippers, or should we be thinking of them in a higher plane, given that it's, what is this, July 21st or whatever? But should we be thinking of them as a team that should be in the top tier of the Western Conference? Or are they just a cute and cuddly team?
They certainly improved, right? You look at, are they better today than the roster that they ended the season with? Yeah, they lost Norman Powell, who played important roles for them at times last year, but just the depth. And, in this version of the NBA, right, we're valuing depth over a big three.
Yes.
Right. So they're certainly suited for the current NBA models. The problem is, do you still get to the point that you have the best player on the court in any series? If you play Denver, if you play Oklahoma City, or if you play Houston, or if you play the Warriors, if you play the Lakers even, do you have the best player on the court? And, that's something that still holds. It's funny. I just did a seminar on numbers without numbers, how to utilize stats in your storytelling and data in your storytelling when I was out at the sports business classroom in Vegas. And I think that the champions since 1980 had a player who finished basically in the top three. I think the average MVP finish for the champions team's best player was like 2.3 in the MVP voting, right? So you got to have a top three. And obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder, the reigning champions, personified or exemplified that with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP winning. And they had the best point differential during the regular season. So those are two traditional indicators of championship worthiness. I just don't see the Clippers, for all their depth, I don't see them having anyone finishing in the top 5 in the MVP voting. And sometimes it really is that simple, Vinny. Do you have one of the 5 best players in the league on your roster when you're competing for a championship?
It's funny. I want to detour so bad, J.A. I want to detour so bad and try to name the years where you weren't 1, 2, or 3 in MVP voting. Like, the weird brain in me wants to just go there and go down the rabbit hole and see if I could figure it out or whatever. But I'm not going to do that because I feel like we would have way too much fun, right? But
it is fun. It is fun to go by. But it's like once a decade. Chauncey Billups, your boy. That's why you want to go down that rabbit hole.
No, those are the easy ones.
Actually,
those are the easy ones.
Pistons championships. It's crazy. Like Isaiah and Isaiah finished way down. He wasn't top 5 in the Pistons' best years.
Because ever since he made the comments or echoed the comments about Larry Bird, the majority media decided to take it out on him. And his individual numbers for the way that the Pistons played, the slowdown style, you weren't going to get 22-11 like Magic. You were going to get 18-9 or 19-8, and those numbers didn't jump off the page like Magic's did, or Kevin Johnson's, or even John Stockton's, because the Pistons were playing a completely different game. But I get your point.
You should rename this podcast "Caping for Zeke."
No, we're not doing that.
No, we're not doing that.
We're not doing that. That'll be a special edition of the Good Word podcast.
No, that's every edition of the Good Word.
No, here's what I will say to your point about the Clippers. I give you Kawhi Leonard's playoff numbers from last year, right? Once again, 7-game sample size. You don't know how his health is going to hold up. But once he came back, he looked like Kawhi Leonard. And in that playoff series against Denver, where if they win that series, they could very well be the ones in the Western Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. Like, that's how tightly contested that series was.
I was out there during that Denver series, and they liked how they matched up with OKC if they could get in. And OKC was having, they got off to a little bit of a stumble early. They're like, they felt confident if they got past Denver that they could match up well with OKC.
And they couldn't. And they couldn't because James Harden that Tiger went Tiger in Game 7. But, Kawhi Leonard on 50, 40, 78 splits, 25 a night, 5 assists, almost 8 rebounds. If we're extrapolating that for a
Was he better than
65
Jokic?
games, no, nobody's better than Jokic. Not even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
No, he's not. But to your point, I get that. And the question becomes, can you depend on Bradley Beal and Chris Paul? I think, and I want to see if you agree with me on this one, J.A. When a player gets soured on by the league because he makes too much money or because he's playing on a team that's underwhelming or disappointing or whatever, and we got to point the finger at the guy who makes a lot of money with the no trade clause, is Bradley Beal the guy who can maybe be the best version of himself at this point, playing for the Clippers where he's not expected to do the heavy lifting? Or is he the guy that is, you know what, man, he's never done real winning in his entire career? When he's had to be the number 1 or 2 guy, he doesn't contribute to winning, he doesn't help winning, and he's not going to help this team. What does he sit on one of those ends for you, or is it more gray area than that?
To me, it's not about is Bradley Beal like an all-NBA player. It's can he stay on the court? And the biggest problem, or one of the issues in Phoenix, was that he was hurt too much. So, if your best player, you're concerned about injuries and getting through the season healthy. If one of your main additions, you're concerned about injuries and getting through the season healthy. We always talk about if healthy, but has that ever applied to a team more than these Clippers, starting with their best player and then their marquee addition in the offseason? Your foundational piece and your addition, you're worried about them getting through the season, putting yourself in best position, right? Like, would the Clippers have had to play the Nuggets if they'd been healthier throughout the regular season?
No,
right?
no.
And they had a pretty good healthy year, right? Kawhi probably played more games than he had in a while, but it's still, they still weren't throwing out their peak roster every night.
Yeah, he played 37 games last year. The year before, he played 68. He signed the extension and then got hurt, which is the most Kawhi Leonard thing ever a couple of years ago. But yeah, to your point, once he played last year, averaged almost 22 a night, 6 rebounds, and he had a slow start to that. But once he's like an old Chevy, like the old Chevy that you would hear coming down the street. But once it got going, that old Chevy could get moving. It just takes a long time for the old Chevy to go. And now I think he's 33. Maybe 34. I think he turned 34 in June, if I remember correctly. It's 25.
And some of it's been chronic.
Yeah.
It would almost be better. Not that I'd wish this on anybody, but it almost would have been better, like if the injury history of Kawhi had been like a torn ACL or something, rather than chronic issues that you're continually managing. And
he had the ACL in 21 during the 21 playoffs, where he looked like the destroyer of everything, and he came down hard on that one play against Utah, and they kept slow playing and not telling us what the injury was when it was clearly an ACL. And he wound up missing the next of that season. Like, he's had the big injury.
Right.
He's just had so many other nicks and bruises
since.
That's
not what we're talking about now.
Right. That's not what we're talking about now.
It's been some lingering stuff.
You don't have to agree, but you have to click subscribe. Debate lives here. Yahoo Sports is where the conversation starts. Bring your takes to the comments.